Autogynephilia was defined by Dr. Ray Blanchard. His studies focused on patients born male who desired genital reconstruction surgery, GRS, to change their male genitalia into cosmetic facsimiles of female ones. Blanchard's work is the definitive basis of the science on the subject of male to feminine transsexualism. He defined in the first place a group he called homosexual transsexual, HSTS. The most important factors that link the individuals together is that they are uniquely sexually attracted to men, in exactly the same way as women are, and that they are remarkably feminine in manners, comportment, and appearance. Their parents and siblings would have noticed from an early age that they were like girls. Perhaps more importantly, however, Blanchard identified another group that was presenting in significant numbers. This group he found puzzling. The people in it were older. They were not in any way feminine or effeminate, and they had extreme difficulty passing as women. They were overwhelmingly white, with middle-class professional backgrounds, who had been successful in their careers. In addition, they were nearly always married, and usually had children. Frequently these last were at the point of becoming independent. Most importantly, however, these individuals were never attracted to men, at least prior to transition. This dichotomy had been observed before, since the time of Magnus Hirschfeld, but nobody had been able to explain what was going on. Blanchard HSTS were easy to understand. They are socially, sexually, romantically, and behaviourally women. It really is that simple. They may not be women in a biological sense, but in every other way, that's what they are. The second group was not like that, and their profile was much more difficult to describe. These individuals were sexually, socially, romantically, and behaviourally men, as well as being biological males. They could not have been more different from the HSTS profile. Blanchard argued that the root cause of their condition must reside in their male sexuality, since they clearly could not have a female sexuality. This observation, backed up by statistical surveys and questionnaires, led Blanchard to the discovery that the most important such factor in this second group was their attraction to themselves as women. This allowed him to formulate a testable hypothesis. Autogynephilia is a man's propensity to be sexually aroused by the thought or image of himself as a woman. Fundamentally, this remains unchallenged science. However, other researchers have highlighted differences in the profiles of the AGPs they have studied from the Blanchard model. This probably means that there is a significant cultural overlay on the basic condition, which is already complex. Looking at the situation in Southeast Asia, where most AGPs present with markedly different profiles from the West, tends to confirm this. So while the attraction of the subject to the idea of being a woman remains the underlying motivation, the precise manner in which this may be satisfied is remarkably varied. Most people, including HSTS, are attracted to personalities outside the self. Other people. AGPs are different. Their primary objects of sexual attraction are themselves, but as women. Blanchard called this misdirection of sexual attraction an erotic target location error. In the West, many men with this condition remain secret fetishistic cross-dressers all their lives. Their visibility is directly related to social factors. The less acceptable it is for a man to wear woman's clothing, the more likely that they will keep the behaviour a secret. A great many go to their graves without their wives or children ever knowing the truth. Psychologically, the development of the condition follows a defined path. Usually, either at or sometime after puberty, the subject becomes sexually aroused by the thought of himself in women's clothing or just by conceiving of himself in fantasy as a woman. Increasingly, however, evidence is appearing that some people experience a precursor to autogynephilia in childhood, before puberty. What may be happening is that the subject is having early crushes on the idea of being a woman. This appears to be consistent with the way that people with other orientations show early crushes on the target that will become their adult sexual desire. This suggests that autogynephilia is a distinct orientation, which may sit alongside a more conventional one. Although many AGPs masturbate while dressed as women, not all do. However, Blanchard was able to show that there were other activities which, while not specifically sexual, could still provide sexual reward. Ask yourself, if you are a heterosexual man, would putting on lingerie and stockings make you feel sexy? Would wearing lip gloss and eyeliner get you hot and bothered? Or what about a pair of hot pants or a push-up bra? A nice new hairdo and a manicure? If you're a heterosexual woman, ask yourself, would wearing a three-piece suit make you feel sexy? What about some nice brogues? Or what about growing a beard? Would that make you feel sexy? There is actually no female equivalent to autogynephilia. This is just an exercise. These feelings are sexual rewards, even though they're not actually sexual acts. And this is the basis of autogynephilia. It is an orientation in which appearing as a woman provides a range of sexual reward. Because sexual reward is so powerful a confirming agent for behaviour, this practice leads to an intensification of the condition. Sexual reward, after all, is the basis of human bonding. However, the bond being formed here is not between two separate individuals, but within the mind of a single male individual. This means that a second personality must be created by the subject to fall in love with. Typically, this happens soon after the onset of the condition. This second personality grows within the mind of the subject. It was created as an object of desire and has been nourished through rewarding behaviour, often for decades. It may become so powerful that it overwhelms the male personality that invented it. At this point, the subject becomes intensely uncomfortable with being a man and feels a need to transition. In the West, this typically happens in middle age. It was overwhelmingly the case when Blanchard was researching autogynephilia. The results can be catastrophic. The wife of such an individual may be told she must become a lesbian by the man she married. However, he is not really the man she married, but a secret personality, which he has been developing for decades. The man she married is effectively dead. His personality swamped. The classic late transitioning Western AGP remains a man in every sense except that of appearance. His attraction to women remains exactly the same as the heteronormative males. There are two other forms. This classic profile accounts for some 60% or more of AGPs in the West. However, Blanchard identified two other sexual desires amongst AGPs. The first he termed analoerotic. Sometimes these individuals are misrepresented as asexual, but this is simplistic. Analoerotics do not derive sexual pleasure from sex with others. Instead, they get it from such things as using women's toilets, from dressing parties, which are frequently advertised in the media targeting AGPs, from knitting, playing stereotypical women's roles. And here the reward that feeds the autogynephilia is social acceptance as women. And of course they also will masturbate alone in front of a mirror. So there's no reaffirming exchange with another person. It's all being done inside their heads. The other group of AGPs identified by Blanchard, he called pseudo-bisexual. Like the others, prior to transition, these men have no sexual interest in other men. However, once they begin hormone therapy and begin to feminize, these individuals explore being women in a more challenging environment. For them, going out in public, dressed in women's clothes, or self-stimulating in front of a mirror, is not enough. They need to be sexually desired by men. This is an extension of their autogynephilia, in which the person they have created must be taken not just socially, but also sexually, as a woman. The individuals in this group often elect to have GRS, but not always. There's a significant number of sex workers in the West who are pseudo-bisexual AGPs. Many of their male clients are also AGP. Another path that AGPs may follow to assuage their autogynephilia is through competition against natal women. Mianne Bagger, for example, was the first trans woman golfer. Much more concerning is Fallon Fox, who became an MMA fighter after transitioning. Success in these fields satisfies the autogynephilia through the fantasy of being accepted as women. Though quite how using a man's physique to beat the pulp out of natal women can be tolerated is unimaginable. Well, if you're not persuaded by the postmodernist bunk of identity politics. A more civilized form of competition, or at least one less likely to cause physical harm, is in beauty pageants and modelling. This is hugely popular across Asia and elsewhere, and HSTS and AGP transsexuals compete with each other on all fours, and the AGPs often win. Even more interestingly, perhaps, is a phenomenon seen in Italy and Spain. Both are well-known destinations of South American travesti, or transsexual prostitutes. Many of these advertise through websites like Arcaton or Distintas, which categorize escorts as travesti or women. Only a minority have GRS, but if they do, they will immediately remove all trace of their former selves and reappear as women prostitutes. They then compete directly with women, natal women, for male clientele. This contrasts with the Blanchard sample. It was rare amongst Blanchard's AGPs to find that they worked as sex workers, but that's one of the cultural differences that we see with other parts of the world. Such avenues are closed to the majority of Western AGPs because they transition so late. By the time they do, they are thoroughly masculinized physically. They can never hope to pass as women, far less compete with them in physical beauty. Furthermore, their youthful socialization has given them no training in how to act like women. So not only do they look like men, they also behave like them. However, in the decades since Blanchard defined autogynephilia, much has changed. Even in the West, autogynephilias are presenting much younger and can be attractive, if tall. The fact is, autogynephilia is an enormously complicated and disparate phenomenon which science still has much to learn about. What is not in doubt is that it's real, and it is the stimulus for an unknown percentage, possibly a majority, of male to feminine transitions worldwide.